As we all know, A Song of Ice and Fire is a fantasy series based off of medieval Europe. Many different elements of the setting and characters are based off of historical real-life events, including Sansa Stark, who almost definitely is inspired by two iconic Tudor queens, Elizabeth of York and Elizabeth I. The Lancaster and York feud that brought about the start of the Tudor dynasty is very clearly the inspiration for the Lannister and Stark feud, so it's unsurprising that the creation of Sansa, a key character in this conflict, would be partially inspired by Elizabeth of York, a person who was key in ending this conflict. Elizabeth of York was the daughter of King Edward IV and his wife Elizabeth Woodville. Her childhood, unlike Sansa's, was never really peaceful, with ongoing conflict resulting in two different betrothals being called off. However, similarly to Sansa, her life got unexpectedly worse after the death of her father in 1483. Edward's brother Richard, who we all know as Richard III, took now King Edward V to the Tower of London and convinced her mother, Elizabeth Woodville, to let Edward's brother, also called Richard, to join him in the Tower of London. Elizabeth never saw her brothers again, as shortly afterwards the two mysteriously disappeared from the tower and were believed to be dead, just as Bran and Rickon are believed to be dead by most of the characters in the series. Only the reader and a few select characters know that they are in fact alive. One of the biggest myths about Richard III is that he had plans to marry Elizabeth himself, which would not actually make any sense as she was delegitimised and considered a bastard by the time of his ascension to the throne. However, a good comparison to note is the fact that Littlefinger does plan to marry Sansa in the series and rule the Seven Kingdoms, and could be considered her uncle for marrying Lysa Tully. Although there are many similarities between Sansa Stark and Elizabeth of York, she is clearly not the only inspiration behind Sansa's character. From the red hair to the badass moments, Sansa is also inspired by Queen Elizabeth I of England and Wales. Elizabeth of York's granddaughter, Elizabeth I of England, was the daughter of Henry VIII and his second wife Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn, similarly to Ned Stark, was labelled as traitor and beheaded with a sword. Both Elizabeth and Sansa suffered abuse afterwards as a result of their parents' execution, with Elizabeth being delegitimised and Sansa literally being beaten by Joffrey. Unlike the books, which seem to have a perfect balance of inspiration from the two famous women for Sansa, the TV show's later seasons seem to heavily draw inspiration from just Elizabeth I when it comes to her. Unlike Elizabeth of York, who didn't really get involved in politics, Sansa at times seems to be the only character who is still thinking logically and politically in seasons 7 and 8 of the show. Not only that, but at the end of the series, similar to the Virgin Queen herself, Sansa ends up ruling by herself, being the only and technically last Stark in Winterfell, perhaps suggesting that, like her inspiration, she will be the last reigning monarch of this dynasty. In conclusion, although the character of Sansa is definitely inspired equally from these two historical figures, if George R. R. Martin is going to write Sansa like how she is in the later seasons of the show, then as she becomes less of a key figure in ending the Lannister and Stark conflict, and more of a leader, or rather a queen, then there will be more inspirations drawn from the life of Elizabeth I. Thank you for watching.